How we doing, everybody? It's Wardy here, and as you guys can see, we're back at it, breaking down all the latest news and rumblings in Mets land. And today, that being January 6, 2025, I wish I had breaking news. The Mets are officially signing or trading for so-and-so, and while we impatiently wait for that to actually happen, what we do have in the meantime is the latest information to keep you guys in on the know for those that do pay attention to every little detail, minute, small or big, throughout the course of the offseason. And if you guys are fed up with rumors and things of that nature already at this point in January, that's fine. Just make sure you click off so that way I don't need to hear you ranting in the comments down below about things I unfortunately don't have control in as a fan and not someone actively working in the Mets front office. But today's discussion is headlined by the fact that Cody Bellinger is the supposed preferred player for the New York Mets over Juan Tucker should have come down to landing one or the other this offseason. We'll get into not only where that reporting stems from, what Cody Bellinger does to separate himself from Juan Tucker, what Kyle Tucker does a great job on separating himself from Cody Bellinger and others. We'll compare and contrast those players a bit more. We'll talk more on Tucker's market in relation to the Blue Jays, as well as Cody Bellinger's market in relation to the New York Yankees and how it's far from a certainty that he's going to land back in the Bronx, at least as of now. We'll also get into how one of Framber Valdez or Ranger Suarez landing with the New York Mets feels inevitable, according to some in the media. We'll get into where that stems from and why. And to wrap up the show, we'll talk a bit on Juan Soto, as he has shared some key remarks with the media over the past week that I think you guys will find interesting, to say the least. So sit back, relax, and get yourself ready for the ride, which is our latest breakdown, WardyNYM. Just hit that like and subscribe button on your way in. Let me know your thoughts, reactions, and most certainly analysis in the comments down below to the following topics that we're about to break down. And this one regarding Bellinger, Tucker, Suarez, Valdez, Soto, and a whole lot more. Shout out to today's video sponsor at Sleeper that has you covered for everything in the sports fantasy space. Now with NFL playoffs right around the corner, let's get you set with our multi-pick leg that you guys see here. It's headlined by my guy DK Metcalf. I'm a Steelers fan. I don't know how they made playoffs versus Chris Boswell missing his first extra point of the year at all this season, and then it's the rookie for the Ravens absolutely botching that easy field goal. Billy Cundiff is somewhere smirking, if you know, you know. Well, the Ravens are out, the Steelers are in, and DK Metcalf is returning from his 2-game suspension, so we're going to hammer the over on anytime touchdown for the #1 target for Aaron Rodgers there in Pittsburgh as they look to take down the Houston Texans. We're also going to hammer the over on yards for one Caleb Williams representing the Bears big time in their heated matchup against the Packers, as well as the veteran stud and Matthew Stafford going toe-to-toe against the Panthers there in Carolina. If you guys like the picks that you see beside me or want to place your own in the NFL space or just sports fantasy as a whole, check us out at Sleeper and use our promo code HMA because you're going to get a 100% match up to $100 on your first deposit. Check out Sleeper for all things fantasy, link down below, and shout out to them once more. All right, folks, let's hop right into this one, and we'll get away from the Bellinger highlights, even though we'll come back to them, because, of course, today's discussion will be headlined by the former New York Yankee, potentially turn soon-to-be New York Met, but obviously we await for that to become a reality. In the meantime, everybody, let's go ahead and let's get started with these topics that you guys and gals can see here. And let's just go in somewhat order of what we've seen regarding Cody Bellinger over the past 24 to 48 hours. First, we see Will Salmon on Baseball Night in New York. That we see for SNY does a fantastic job. One of the most notable segments we've seen with Will Salmon on SNY's Baseball Night in New York is the day prior to the Mets signing Jorge Polanco, on how he pulled out of thin air how Jorge Polanco would be a nice fit for the Mets potentially at first base instead of a trade for Wilson Contreras. Obviously, Salmon had some intel at the time because he broke the news that Polanco was signing with the Mets the following morning. And you don't just throw out that name for the sake of doing so unless you clearly know something that the average fan like myself didn't at the time. So we see Salmon speak over the past days stating the following: I do feel that Cody Bellinger fits the Mets. I think that goes without saying. I feel like anyone who's been paying attention this offseason knows very well that Cody Bellinger fits this Mets club in more ways than one. But it continues on from there, because then what we also see is this comes out of Yankees camp over the past day from Jack Curry, says the following regarding the Yankees nearing any moves. Cody Bellinger and the Yankees clearly have a gap as of now. That only benefits a club like the New York Mets, obviously. And it's further telling that there's clearly a gap because of either years or dollars. And obviously Bellinger being, you know, a guy that's a Scott Boras type player. So he's naturally looking for the best payday and some of these most comfortable with. Edward Cabrera, nothing is imminent on a trade for the young right-hander from Miami that the Mets are also in the market for. before, and how Bo Bichette landing there is unlikely. We'll talk more on Bo Bichette, as it appears unlikely that he may return to the Toronto Blue Jays as well, believe it or not. So that'll impact potentially the markets of Kyle Tucker in particular. He says that the team continues to work on Bellinger and trades for starting pitchers like Peralta, Gore. So essentially the same thing the Mets are doing. It just comes down to who's actually going to get more of the job done here in this regard. The Mets would love an offseason where they sign Cody Bellinger and trade for Edward Cabrera, Freddie Peralta, one of those players that's desirable in the trade market right now. But the Yankees, not looking all that great in Yanks camp right now for those that are adamant on them making moves as well. So believe it or not, David Stearns is not the only one that finds himself in this category as someone who has been a little anticlimactic versus what fans have wanted and what's a pressure cooker of an offseason. But as we continue on regarding Bellinger, let's also get into this, and that is courtesy that you guys can see here, John Heyman, on the Mets' interest in Cody Bellinger. The Mets like Bellinger not only for their emphasized run prevention, but for added lineup protection for Juan Soto. No one can fully protect him as someone as great as Soto, of course, but Bellinger is the best, most obvious hope. And this, of course, is the same man who did a great job batting right next to one Aaron Judge in replacement for Juan Soto, funny enough, a year removed. How crazy it would be if the Mets land Bellinger in the end. It's back-to-back years. The Mets pry away the best bat that was paired with Aaron Judge throughout the regular season. A year ago is Juan Soto, and now a year later it's Cody Bellinger. We also see here, reaffirmed from SNY, that there's clearly a gap between Cody Bellinger and the Yankees. And now let's get into this, everybody. Also, I thought this was notable regarding Kazuma Akamoto going to the Blue Jays. His daughter randomly chose a logo out of 30 teams, and that logo was the Blue Jays. So I guess there was some fate that went into it for why he made that decision to go there in particular. But now let's get into this more in regards to Cody Bellinger that you guys can see here, and then we'll talk about the Soto stuff later. Shout out to Mets Mirage, but they're just reaffirming. Mark Feinsand of MLB stating the following. As you guys can see, Mark Feinsand noted the Mets are eager to add an impact outfield bat. Color me shocked. It's almost like we've seen this reaffirmed from everyone in the media. And like the Yankees, prefer Cody Bellinger. Now, Feinsand did go on to add that this preference doesn't take them out on Tucker by any stretch, and that Tucker really makes perfect sense for the Mets, and I agree with him. I think Tucker makes perfect sense. But I think if a player makes even more perfect sense than Kyle Tucker, it is without a doubt the player that the Mets supposedly prefer, like the New York Yankees, and that is the former New York Yankee and Cody Bellinger. Now, there are obvious reasons for this, but in case you guys have been living under a rock, I will make it nice and simple and concise for you as to what is most attractive in regards to Cody Bellinger in ways that Kyle Tucker maybe isn't to the same level. And it has a lot to do with that versatility, right? We had Mets VP, baseball ops and assistant GM, Mr. Vidal Brazula, speak to the media over the past week or so and reiterate how the players that the Mets are in the market for are guys that certainly help on the versatility front that can impact them in various ways. Cough, cough, Cody Bellinger. And as we see here, Cody was in the 91st percentile in fielding run value, 69th in base running value, 82nd in batting run value, was also league average in XWOBA, expected batting average, expected slug, below league average in average exit velocity and barrel and hard hit because he's fluctuated a bit there with his swing rates over the years. Very good hitter that we know when as best Bellinger, but also can be just, above league average when he's not doing anything crazy. In the 76th percentile in sweet spot percentage, 72nd in squared up percentage, 84th that we see in whip percentage, 91st in K percentage, league average and walk percentage. But folks, this is what the Mets, specifically David Stearns, love. I'm sure 93rd percentile in outs above average for his defense, 91st in arm value, 83rd in arm strength, 72nd in sprint speed. So Cody Bellinger, even with having, favorable home numbers versus on the road because he took advantage of the short porch at Yankee Stadium as a left-handed hitting slugger, pulling to the right side, Belly still finished the year with a very respectable 89 runs scored, 29 home runs, 98 RBIs, batting right along Aaron Judge, 272, 334, 480 clip, good for a 5-WAR season and 25% above league average as a batter. That's a better overall season than Pete Alonso this past year on Fangraphs' his wins above replacement. And while the bat isn't to the same level as Alonso, this is the best bat out there, not named Kyle Tucker, if you're trying to supplement some of that power that you lost from allowing Alonso to walk, still available in the free agent market. And And Bellinger, we have said this what it feels like a million times, and we'll say it 1,000,001 now, is that what separates himself from Kyle Tucker has everything to do with that defense. The ability to play elite caliber defense in left, center, right, and or first base in ways that, a lot of other profiles can do okay, but simply can't do it at all close to the rate that Bellinger's doing right now at the peak prime of his career. That is not only something that's very attractive for a Mets team that was abysmal with their club defense this past year, and that held true pretty consistently throughout the course of the year, but it's also the matter of the fact that Bellinger brings a lot of elements between great base running, someone who I'm sure could average 20 to 30 stolen bags a year in the right setting for the Mets, a guy who could give you 25 plus home runs a year, even with batting at Citi Field, which is more of a pitcher's park versus the bandbox that you have at Yankee Stadium. I still understand completely that, naturally batting with guys like Soto, Lindor, and hopefully a deeper Mets lineup, once it's all said and done and configured, can put him in good standing to put up some respectable seasons. I also look at Cody Bellinger as someone who's about 3 years younger, at least, than Brandon Nimmo. And even if you invested, say, 5 or 6 years, you can worry about the final remaining couple of those years of a contract once you get there, in ways that the Mets were able to get out of Nimmo's remaining 5 years by essentially saving $30 million by taking on Simeon's contract. Simeon's a clubhouse leader, former World Series champion with the Rangers as their captain, mind you. And Bellinger brings those elements of winning that I think is very important. As is the case with Kyle Tucker, you could say to a higher degree. But Bellinger has shown the ability to dominate and do well in big markets his entire career. From LA to winning the championship with the Dodgers, even though it was short season, to then seeing what he did in Chicago, which was very respectable, to now New York in his first year in the Bronx in a contract year, mind you. A lot of guys can't handle that pressure well, and he handled it in stride. So Bellinger, he brings everything that you want in a player profile for the Mets right now, as the Mets are in dire need of an outfield profile. Even though he's another lefty bat you add to the mix, it's okay because you're replacing Bellinger with Nimmo, and I would take Bellinger over Nimmo 10 times out of 10. I love Nimmo to death, but he is not at all the defender that Cody Bellinger is, nor is he consistently the base runner that Bellinger is, and he's also 3 years older than Bellinger. So for all those reasons, it just makes sense to want Bellinger, who knows what it takes to win, has been nothing but a clubhouse character, a really good guy to have around that's been universally said and deemed for everything that I've seen and read and I've heard over the years from his time in LA, especially. And a guy that knows how to take to win in these big markets, I think, is really important. So all these are immediate factors to say, hey, Cody Bellinger is actually a very attractive piece for this New York Mets team. And the Mets only have a true opportunity to land one of these top outfielders between the two. Bellinger, while he doesn't have as high of a floor as Kyle Tucker, that is 1,000% true. I think Kyle Tucker has a higher floor, no doubt, when looking at the offensive ability. Pardon me, I meant to say ceiling as I said that. The better floor, however, is without a doubt Cody Bellinger because of the defensive value that he provides, okay? Bellinger's value defensively, like just casually making that nice sliding catch, like this is stuff that he does on an everyday basis and should be able to do for you every day for at least the next two to three seasons at a really good rate. I think Bellinger profiles best in left, right, or first. I think center, he'd be good there, but not like great there. I think the defense is still best for Bellinger in the corners and at first base, but still a very, very valuable player that, of course, you can give Jorge Polanco more DH reps for the times you have him at first, and Carson Benz, you can have Carson get more reps in left field to begin the year, while Bellinger's more at center, and it's less of a workload for Bench to have to really worry about right now, where Bellinger can so comfortably handle it. Again, ways to get it creative with someone like Bellinger. But yes, I think while the ceiling is higher with Kyle Tucker, given his offensive output, I think the floor is greater with Bellinger for his offensive and defensive value. Base running too. Tucker, of course, can bring plenty base running when he is right, but Cody Bellinger just feels like such a nice fit for the Mets. Here he is taking advantage of the lefty-lefty matchup against David Pearson, pulling it down the first baseline against the Pete Alonso, who could not field that ball in ways that Cody Bellinger most certainly could. It goes without saying, but Cody Bellinger is without a doubt a fantastic fit for this New York Mets team. And if he does not land with the Mets, it's because he goes back to the Yankees, understandably so. It's because him taking advantage of Huascar Brosman and Pete Alonso looking like schmucks there at first base. Look at this. Oh, my God. Again, this is exactly why the Mets want someone like Bellinger, because it will help you, to say the least, defensively, even though Huascar was just all over the place there. And that he takes Genesis Cabrera deep. Look at all these on-Met crime in that May series where Juan Soto looked a little shaken at Yankee Stadium, sadly. But, yes, Cody Bellinger brings what you're looking for if you're the New York Mets. And unless he goes back to the Yankees, goes back to the Dodgers, or potentially signs with a team like the LA Angels, I think Cody Bellinger has New York Mets written all over him, barring changes. But I definitely would love to hear from you guys between Cody Bellinger and Kyle Tucker. Which one do you think is the better fit for the Mets and why? I think better fit right now is Bellinger. But who do I think moves the needle most for this club when looking at ceilings? It is Kyle Tucker. And that's the conversation that we're going to continue to have here as we compare and contrast these players. Because while I understand Tucker doesn't necessarily jump off the paper, like Tucker actually had lesser value as a player last year than Bellinger. He had 0.4 WAR less than Bellinger, but he was also around 10% higher in the WRC plus at a 136 WRC plus, which means he was 36% above league average as a batter. But Tucker's just one of these guys that, between his ability to be a World Series champ with the Houston Astros, cheating scandal aside after they beat the Phillies comfortably a couple years ago, and Tucker's ability to have solid defensive rates, he just fluctuate. Like this past year, 25th percentile, not great. Very good arm strength, but not so great otherwise. Then we look at last season. He's in the 60th plus percentile, or just around, in outs above average, above league average. Then the 2023 season drops all the way to 10th. Not looking good. Gets to the 2022 season, he's all the way to the 87th. So Tucker playing left versus right field would obviously be a key factor here, but he's just fluctuating defensively in his career. He hasn't had that consistency the way that Bellinger has, which is what makes him so attractive. But here's what makes Tucker so attractive. See the 90th percentile in batting run value, 78th in base running value, 52nd in fielding run value, 92nd xWOBA, 84th in expected batting average, 82nd in expected slugging, 53rd in average exit velocity, 65th in barrel percentage, 38th in hard hit percentage, 80th in sweet spot league average in bat speed, 82nd in squared up percentage, 98th in chase percentage. Buddy has such an elite eye at the plate, 76th in whip percentage, 85th in K percentage, 96th in walk percentage. Tremendous numbers. And again, good arm strength. Sprint speed ain't nothing crazy, but he can still steal bags for you. Had 25 stolen bags this past year, more than Bellinger by like 10, if not 12, which is interesting because he's not nearly as good of a base runner on paper. But Juan Soto, I'm always going to use him as an example now moving forward. But Tucker had an OPS of 841 this year, had an OPS of 993 in his final year in a shortened season with the Astros, and an 886 OPS the year prior in 2023. We know that Tucker can be as good as elite as like 70% above league average as a batter, and his floor, I think, is around, at least 20% above league average as a batter still. Tucker's a very valuable player, and we know how clutch he has been with runners in scoring position, playoff moments over the years. His ability to balance both offense and defense has been admirable to say the least. And 22 home runs, 73 RBIs, 25 stolen bags doesn't jump off the board as good as Cody Bellinger. But when you bear in mind he didn't have Aaron Judge in the lineup next to him, when you bear in mind that Tucker, even with this sample size, with all those other numbers, not looking as good on paper as Bellinger, still, of course, had a higher on base than we saw at Belly, someone who put up a very respectable batting average, and still was a more valuable player than Bellinger, or pardon me, I apologize, was only 0.4 WAR lower than Bellinger this past year. But the fact that their value was that close on those offensive numbers, we're a little bit of a gap depending on what we're looking at, shows you the value that Tucker brings with his offensive alone, because it wasn't known for his defense this year, to say the least. It was really heavily backed by that offensive upside there in his one and done year in Wrigley, because we know he ain't going back to the Cubs as of now. But Kyle Tucker, what do I love so much about him in ways that Cody Bellinger just doesn't compare? It really just comes down to that ceiling, okay? The Mets would be adding the two top outfielders in the market over the back-to-back years collectively on this team together. Him and Juan Soto as a duo is a way to really build a foundation for having top players that you want to build around to have a championship club. It reminds me more of the Dodgers in the Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman move. That was a nice compliment on top of the blossomings of guys like Max Muncy and others that they had either internally that weren't drafted by them but developed greatly in their organization, or, with guys that, blended well with the other veterans like Kike Hernandez, whatever the case may be, before Shohei Ohtani even. Like, if you have Juan Soto, and I would imagine Soto would move to left field for Tucker to command right because he's a better defender, and Soto will play for the World Baseball Classic for Team Dominican Republic this year in left field, so that is something to bear in mind. But if you have Tucker and Soto in your quarter outfields, that's two of the best outfielders in baseball right there with your team. You still have one of the best shortstops in baseball in Francisco Lindor. You have the best defensive second baseman in baseball in Marcus Semien. and you would have leaders. Like, that's the thing. Cody Bellinger is a leader, but Tucker brings a lot of leadership qualities from his time in Houston and a lot of championship pedigree. I look at a guy like Tucker, a World Series on his resume. I look at a guy like Marcus Semien, a World Series on his resume. I look at a guy like Juan Soto, a World Series on his resume. And I look at Francisco Lindor, a World Series finalist on his resume. You know, those are the kind of guys that you want the Mets to build this club around, especially if they're going to balance the youth movement with youngsters like Carson Bench, Jet Williams, of course, their rotation with Christian Scott, Brandon Sproat, Jonathan, eventually Zach Thornton, Will Watson, Jack Weniger, you know, RJ Gordon, Jonathan Santucci, the list goes on and on. The Mets have a lot of things to be excited about, but I think that one of Cody Bellinger or Kyle Tucker would immediately move this team in the right direction for what they are trying to build. I think you doing this does not really mean that you have to act like a drunken sailor this offseason. It just shows that you went out there and actually landed quality players that you know can impact this team greatly for now and for the future. And both Tucker and Bellinger check off those boxes. So I think if you want more of an immediate guaranteed thing, especially a player who's shown his ability to play well in New York, that's something you could argue that Tucker has yet to prove, then Bellinger is a more attractive guy and is understandably the preferred player for the Mets here. But when you think of ceiling, when you think of guys that can move a needle more for you in certain ways, especially come postseason time, I would much rather have Kyle Tucker in my lineup batting right in hand with Lindor and obviously Soto than I would Cody Bellinger, all things considered. So let me know, guys, again, between the two and Tucker and Bellinger, who do you think makes most sense for this club and why? Now, going on from talking about those two, everybody, let's get into a bit here on the pitching. Because we did see, and shout out to the Bavarian Sports fan on X, didn't mean to do that, but I always appreciate him because I quote his stuff all the time. We'll get to my guy Master Flip here shortly regarding the Juan Soto remarks here. But I did want to just talk about a couple things. One, the Blue Jays re-signing Bo Bichette is increasingly unlikely per Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic. Very interesting, because if this holds true, then that either means that they're really going all in on Kyle Tucker, it means that they're going to go after someone else, or it means that they need to get creative just to make a move happen like this. Because that latest piece from The Athletic also did state today that the Blue Jays would probably be better positioned if they were to try to somehow dump the remaining 4 years of the Anthony Santander contract that's aged like milk since it started a year plus ago. He barely played for them this year, wasn't even on all their playoff rosters getting in the World Series for the DH/quarter outfielder. That if they can part ways with a portion of that contract, that can open more of the floodgates to making a move happen for Tucker, whatever the case may be. But Bichette may not return to the Blue Jays, so all I hope and pray is that he doesn't go to the Dodgers, the Phillies, or the Braves. And I have a very concerning feeling that he will land with one of those clubs if he does not go back to Toronto. So to be determined on that front. If he doesn't maybe go to Boston, that could obviously happen if Bregman doesn't go there. But as we continue on, this is what I want to show you guys. And now, when I say Buster only, I would preface to use a nice big asterisk here, big grain of salt, because what Buster says most certainly doesn't go a lot of the time, okay? And anyone that pays attention knows that. So I'm not trying to mislead or misguide you guys. I'm going to break down his remarks here and tell you that even though I don't think that he's the most trustworthy individual in this space, it is still fairly notable because I agree with what he's saying, and I'll get into why that is. ESPN's Buster only says it seems inevitable that the Mets will sign one of Framber Valdez or Ranger Suarez as they continue to explore the starting pitching market. Now, starting with Ranger Suarez, I 100% agree with the sentiment here from Buster Only because of the following, and that is that the Mets have a rotation right now that hasn't been upgraded when it is without a doubt their biggest area of need. Was their biggest area of need entering the offseason, still is, regardless of now having to add more to the outfield and aspects of the infield and the bullpen. You have to make sure that you figure out this rotation for the better if you want a chance to compete and most certainly to contend in 2025. But Ranger Suarez is a fascinating one to me because, as I'm going to show you guys now, in disregard, these were Kyle Tucker's numbers that we were just looking at. But when you take a look at Rangers' baseball savant numbers, and we just talked about this a day or so ago, they're sexy. Like, they jump off the board right away, and they tell you, oh, Ranger Suarez would be a really nice pickup for my team. And I don't think that's fully wrong and insane. Suarez, who has the sinker, the changeup, the cutter, the curve, the four seam, and the slider, all those pitches to throw the kitchen sink at you, and some elite numbers that you guys can see right here, looking really, really good. We're looking the 70th, 80th, and 90th plus percentiles at most of these metrics. One of the better starters in baseball the past half decade for the Phillies. But as I've told you guys before, and I'll say it again, Ranger Suarez, I would be genuinely surprised if the Mets sign. Here's why. He has a qualified offer attached to him, if I'm not mistaken. He also is more of a 5-and-dive pitcher than he is a guy to give you more consistently 6, 7, or 8 innings or more. He is a guy that has averaged more closer to 150 innings in his career than he has 200. And he doesn't really profile as anything different than being another crafty, soft-tossing southpaw in the Mets rotation when they have David Pearson and Sean Manaea that already check off those boxes. Now, is Suarez the best of the bunch? Absolutely. The numbers speak for itself with a 3.2 ERA and right around the same expected ERA this past season. But knowing that Suarez doesn't even average 91 miles per hour in his fastball, and his fastball has steadily dropped each of the past 4 years, tells me that anything beyond a couple of years would not really be a worthy investment for him and his services. So while I like Ranger Suarez, and I always love the idea of prying good talents away from the Philadelphia Phillies, there's something to be said on if the Philadelphia Phillies do not bend over backwards to bring Ranger back, as say a team like the Mets did. I'm not sure if that's a great look and would honestly give me concerns. Not that it would be this bad, but the Mets allowed Taijuan Walker to walk without hesitating because they knew it was the right move for what his market was demanding. And when he signed that multi-year contract with the Philadelphia Phillies, we all knew it was going to age like milk, and as a surprise to nobody, it did exactly that. Ranger Suarez is a fascinating option for the New York Mets. There are things to him that I do find attractive and that I find appealing, knowing how desperate the Mets are in need of starters. You know the old cliche saying, beggars can't be choosers. I've been saying that a lot lately on this platform because that holds true for us Mets fans who desperately need an upgrade in this rotation. And to give benefit of the doubt, Ranger Suarez has tremendous playoff numbers, so he definitely knows what to do when it comes to clutch time, crunch time, down the stretch in October. But the problem here, again, is that Suarez is not an innings eater. And what do the Mets need? A guy that can actually eat quality innings for them. So it's hard to envision seeing the David Stearns Ram Mets give up QO compensation for a player that he wouldn't sign beyond, say, 3 or tops 4 years and is a soft-tossing southpaw. I really just don't think that that is the route the Mets will find themselves going in. But, of course, if they do that in the end, we'll talk about it and we'll break down the pros and the cons, even though I will say I'm more in a line of wanting a Framber Valdez right now than I am a Ranger Suarez. And I don't think I'm the only one that falls in that category. Because listen, I understand Valdez is a couple years older than Ranger. He's only like 2 years older, not even fully. But those years alone is what deters some people from wanting to give Ranger more than a 3 or 4 year contract. I'm with you. But I think that the Mets, if they land Framber Valdez, will land him on a contract that, again, is more in the range of 3 to 5 years. At absolute most 5 years. Maybe with a 5th year club option or something. I really do think that Framber Valdez is going to be a New York Met, a Baltimore Oriole, or a San Francisco Giant. I don't think it'll be a player, not name those teams, but I shouldn't be surprised by anything at this point in the offseason, because who knows? Maybe it'll be a team like the Phillies or the Braves that come in to absolutely, pardon my French, but piss in my Cheerios or something along those lines. Framber Valdez, what separates him from Ranger Suarez and why I do hope that this is a certainty is because he's the lone ace caliber starter that's still available in this market. Ranger Suarez has his flashes, Zach Gallen has his flashes, but no one has consistently looked more like a frontline starter the past half decade than Framber Valdez for the Houston Astros. And listen, Framber still could go back to the Astros if they think that Tatsuya Imai contract was a really easy thing to swing and do. So who knows? We'll wait and see, obviously. But 31 starts, 192 innings for the veteran southpaw, a World Series champion who beat those Ranger Suarez and those Phillies back a couple years ago. In a head-to-head matchup between the Astros and the Phillies, a 3.75 expected ERA, a respectable K-to-walk ratio, a 4 WAR season for like each of the past 3+ years. Framber Valdez is just a guy that knows how to get it done. He's going to give you north of 200 innings every single year. He can be your opening day starter, and he could be your first starter come playoff time. Him paired with Nolan McLean would have me feeling really good on the front line of this rotation. It also would be nice to actually have a starter in here who can give you that length of anywhere from 6, 7, or 8 innings in ways that Ranger Suarez just does not consistently do for you. So, yes, criticize Valdez all you want for the throw to the catcher. Criticize him for maybe how he looks on the mound with his size, but you cannot critique him for his ability to stay durable over the past number of years and to stay pretty dominant for an Astros team that certainly needed him. What's been endless playoff runs each of the past 5 to 7 years now. Since Valdez has made his debut, he has been right in the thick of playoff production, and it's been good to see him be part of that mix the whole time. It's also been good to see him have good numbers in a park that is not so pitcher friendly, but it's more hitter friendly. I'd imagine that he would transition fairly well if he landed with the New York Mets and played half his season there at Citi Field. But Mets fans, between Framber, Valdez, and Ranger Suarez, which one do you have a greater preference for, and why? Should the Mets go ahead and sign one of them, as there's very little top free agents available for starters in this class, but Valdez checks off those boxes, and I don't think he's going to get a 7-year contract the way that Dylan Cease did. I'll be really taken back if that happens, to say the least. But now, going on for Framber Valdez, everybody, let's get on to our final topics in this one, and that consisted of the following. And these are all just Juan Soto related topics. I want to give a big shout out to my man Master Flip, friend of the platform, for doing a very good job on breaking down, translating for you guys, in case you guys have not seen these certain clips from Juan Soto. So these are just random things regarding Soto, so we're just going to go in order. I'm going to play the audio clips, and then I'm going to break down what he says and just go on from there, just because it's different and something that we haven't done on the platform lately regarding Soto.
Todavía no, dame tiempo. Ahora fue que empezamos. Pero eso es chelcha con los Tigres. Ahí hablando y diciéndole. Al final, en cualquier parte de mi juego que yo pueda ayudar al equipo, yo lo voy a hacer. Claro. So, si algún día ellos me necesitan en esa posición, yo estaré dispuesto a hacerlo. Pero en estos momentos, todavía no. Todavía falta mucho. 14 años más, par de gobierno más, y después de ahí vemos que...
So, Soto talking about the potential of playing at first base. He says, not yet, give me some time. Right now, I'm just getting started. On taking throws at first, and that was in reference to when he was actually doing that. I'd assume probably for his team in DR. He said, that was me having a good time with the boys and chatting it up. At the end of the day, in any role or position where I can help the team, I'm all in. If one day they need me to step into that spot, I'll be ready and willing to do it. But for now, there's still plenty of time left, 14 more years, a few more government changes, and after that, we'll see what happens. That beautifully said by Juan Soto. He's like, listen, we're going to go through multiple presidents through me still. We got a lot of time, okay? Let's just worry about me being our right fielder for now until it becomes a glaring issue where I have to move off a right field. Good question, though, considering there have been some fans that maybe think that the Mets want no long-term commitment for anyone at first base, and Pete Alonso included, obviously, because they think Juan Soto will be there in the next maybe, anywhere 4 or 5 years. Like, it makes somewhat sense, even though I think that's more on the ladder of priorities when making that certain decision for Alonso and his future and stuff like that. But listen, Bryce Harper has now smoothly transitioned to first base. Wouldn't shock me if the man who stepped up and actually brought a championship to DC the year he left, and Juan Soto at a very young age, eventually falls in those shoes and steps as well. Now, let's continue on the Juan Soto talk. This is Juan Soto's personal trainer talking about the potential of stealing more bags in 2026.
Claro, esa es la meta, ese es el objetivo. Le voy a tirar esta por aquí. Nosotros venimos a buscar algo grande este año en base robado.
¿Cómo? 40-40, 40-40.
No te vamos a decir si un 40-40, un 50-50, pero venimos con algo grande.
¿Cómo?
Okay, so Mr. Capellan, and I could be butchering his last name, so if I am, I apologize, say the following. Again, all courtesy Master Flip on X. Can we continue to see an aggressive Juan Soto in the base pass this upcoming year? And he replies, absolutely. That's the goal. That's the objective. I'm putting this out there. We're going big on stolen bases this year. I won't say if it's 40-40 or 50-50, but we're going for something big. So lock it in. At minimum 40-40 season, I'll be placing my preseason bets already. As we continue on, Juan Soto talks about his goals for the 2026 season.
No, al final es ganar un campeonato. Esa fue la meta desde el día 1 y tratar de llevar un campeonato a la ciudad de Queens y a Nueva York. Tú sabes que hace mucho que no ganan, tenemos esa hambre, tenemos esas ansias. Los números personales van a pasar. Yo no me enfoco en eso, me enfoco más en lo que podemos hacer como equipo.
At the end of the day, it's all about winning a championship. That's been the goal since day one, bringing a title to the city of Queens and to New York as a whole. It's been a while since they've won. We're hungry, we're anxious. As far as individual numbers, they'll come. My focus is simple, what we can accomplish together as a team. Awesomely said yet again by Juan Soto. And last but not least, here's what we have Juan Soto talking about how Carlos Beltran, this came out over the past week, but I never got a chance to talk about it, how Beltran really helped him have the right mentality when facing adversity for the first time as a New York Met. Listen up.
Él me dijo que una vez él le pasó lo mismo, que estaba en una baja en Nueva York, todo el mundo le estaba cayendo encima. Y él tenía que jugar con una portalita de él que tenía todos los stats de él, para él mismo decirse, mira, ese tipo es quien yo soy. No el que ellos dicen, es el que yo soy. Y yo creo que es algo que mentalmente te ayuda a poder salir poco a poco del slump que tú estés teniendo en ese momento. Ese fue, yo diría que el último que marcó diferencia.
Y parece que marcó diferencia porque terminaste por todo lo alto, la bateaste todo.
Sí.
Okay, Soto on how Carlos Beltran helped him during his struggles, and I quote, he shared that the exact same thing happened to him once when he was really struggling in New York. Everyone was piling on and the pressure was intense. To get through it, he started carrying a card with all of his key stats written on it. Every time he looked at it, he reminded himself, this is who I am as a player, not the version everyone else is trying to paint. That simple mental reset helped him break out of the slump. Looking back, I'd say that was the last piece of advice that truly made a difference for me. So that's notable too. Soto kind of letting it be known that, obviously he gets relayed stuff all the time, but it doesn't mean that it always sticks. So for him to say that that was the last time that he got advice that really made a difference for him, that's good. And I actually like that perspective quite a bit because I say this all the time, even as a very hot-headed and emotionally irrational fan that I can be, saying just some absolutely heinous things regarding players in the club. And I've apologized countlessly for it, and I will continue to, because I know my emotions will get the best of me when the Mets suck, inevitably, throughout courses of every single season. But even in those moments, I do think about the player point of view and how this impacts them. And that's why I always say I'm not pro booing players, even though I understand why fans do it at times. And, to the idea of being a player on a massive contract, being paid millions, because when Beltran first landed with the Mets, that was a massive deal at the time, obviously, to handle all that pressure and, to defer the point of just looking at his numbers and saying, like, I'm the shit, basically. Like, I know exactly who I am. I need to stop letting the pressure of these outside noises get in the way. And that's why I tell you guys, only more harm than good comes in if you pile on a guy like Juan Soto as well. We just want him to succeed. And it's clear as day, by allowing him to succeed is to help uplift him to the best of our abilities, even while he's through those slumps. Because there's a reason why you invested the largest contract in North American sports history on this player. He's the guy in for the long haul. He's the guy that you should hopefully, God willing, win multiple championships with when the dust settles and everything's said and done. But in order for that to happen, he needs to not only buy in on wanting to be here, but we need to buy in on him being the guy that is supposed to help lead the pack along with Lindor and others. So I hope Mets fans, regardless of the success or lack thereof that we get from the Mets as a whole in 2026, continue to give the flowers, rightfully so, to Juan Soto, because he quietly had a fantastic year, especially in the second half for the Mets in his first year in Flushing, Queens, and he's only going to get better more than likely. So appreciate him, appreciate his prime for what it is right now, because we're paying the big bucks for a reason, and we have to deal with the unfortunate circumstance at times, which is the parking going up to $50 or $60 per, or having to pay even more on tickets, more for concessions, things that we don't want to do, especially after the Mets continue to fail. But Juan Soto is absolutely a treat to watch, and I look forward to seeing him dominate in 2026, regardless on what the Mets do as a whole. But Mets fans, that is going to do it. Shout out once more to Master Flip for the great translation from some of these clips over the past week. But I want to hear from you guys, your key takeaways, thoughts, analysis, the comments down below. And before we get out of here, if you haven't known already, check out SeatGeek that has you covered for everything in the ticketing space, guys. Whether it's for NBA tickets, NFL tickets, concert shows, comedy shows, MMA, boxing, you name it, SeatGeek has you covered for everything in the ticketing space. Utilize our promo code WARDY10, that is WARDY10, for 10% off your next ticket purchase. Link down below, folks. And shout out to Sleeper once more. Use the promo code HMA to get up to $100 match up to $100 that you see there on your next deposit. Thank you guys again. And as always, no matter what, let's go Mets. Peace out, everybody.